Hello, I'm Polly Pig. Boss Flint Eye sent me over to entertain you. I think you are wonderful. Go away. I long to hug and kiss you. Marry me and let me be your wife.
What's the matter? Has the cat got you too?
You hurt. Put me
Oh,
down.
I wouldn't hurt you, little lady. Give me a kiss, huh?
You won't believe what happened to me. And I told her what happened, and she got kind of quiet. She said, well, you don't know what happened to me. As bad as Freed was to me.
You tried
but he came on to my mother.
Recently, people have been remembering Shirley Temple's life, and past videos of hers that had been buried have come to life exposing some of the disturbing things that Hollywood had the young girl do to entertain the public. Let's take a deep dive into the tragic life of young Shirley and how Hollywood ruined her. Everyone knows the name Shirley Temple, whether you're picturing the bright-eyed child star or the cherry-flavored mocktail. Shirley was born as Shirley Jane Temple in Santa Monica, California on April 23, 1928, as the daughter of a homemaker and a bank employee. Shirley seemed to have been talented even from a young age, and at the age of 3, Temple's mother, Gertrude, enrolled her in Meglin's dance school in Los Angeles, where she was scouted by Charles Lamount, a casting director for the now-defunct studio, Educational Pictures.
Whatever, baby. No. Gee, would you think I expensive? Here's the last one. Now I'm...
In 1932, the studio began a series called Baby Burlesques, where preschool-aged children would reenact famous films and current events. Now, the problem started right at the beginning of her career, since while depicting the roles bestowed upon them, the children were weirdly dressed in inappropriate clothing, while some still in diapers. It was such a weird experience for both the young actors trying to act older and the viewers having to look at young children being exploited. Despite the series having a cast of 12 children, it was clear that Shirley Temple was the breakout star. At the age of only 3 years old, she landed a role in her first feature film, The Red-Haired Alibi. Her breakthrough film would come in May of 1934 with Fox Studios' Stand Up and Cheer. And in December of the same year, she starred in Bright Eyes with James Dunn, a film written specially for her. Things were going well for the young actress, and by the end of the year, Temple had starred in 10 movies, including 4 starring roles in major feature films. From 1932 to 1949, Temple starred in over 40 films for major studios such as RKO, Warner Brothers, 20th Century Fox, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, Fox, Paramount, Universal, and the infamous Selznick International Pictures. And unfortunately for her, she has a tragic experience from allegedly all the studios she worked with. Between 1935 and 1938, Shirley Temple was the world's top box office star, leaving Hollywood legend Clark Gable in second place. It was during the Great Depression, and people loved seeing the young, bright, and bubbly girl on screen, and whether they were comfortable watching such a young child being put in such situations because of the sadness and grief they were going through, or maybe people were just crappy during her time is still a mystery. Despite her extraordinary level of success, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone that can recall or actually name one of her movies, and that's for a reason. None of her films have aged well in the slightest, and in our time, we've opened our eyes more on what is happening around us. The overt sexualization of Hollywood's youngest starlet began the very moment she first appeared on camera. Her first ever credited role was for a baby burlesque film called War Babies, where she played a prostitute named Charmaine, at the age of 3 years old. Does a 3-year-old even know what being a call girl entails? How did the producers even manage to convince people that it was appropriate for young Shirley to act that role? One particular scene in the feature film, Bright Eyes, shows the toddler singing the song On the Good Ship Lollipop in an uncomfortably short baby doll dress, being carried, held, and touched by an ensemble of around 12 grown men. And this situations didn't stop. It's like producers were hiring her for the inappropriate roles only. The 1936 film, Poor Little Rich Girl, also has plenty of scenes of Temple being fondled by grown men. That entire film as a whole is a prime example of early Hollywood child endangerment and how normalized it was in the industry. Unfortunately, the arrival of young Shirley Temple to the film industry not only brought in creeps from Hollywood and the industry, but also creeps from all across the globe could fulfill their sick, twisted fantasies from the comfort of the movie theater, and things became harder for the young girl when these movies later came out on home media, making the problem worse and more easily hidden. The exploitation of Shirley Temple might have been horrific on screen, but things were so much worse behind the scenes, and it's alleged that during the production of her many films, Temple and her fellow child actors endured an abundance of both physical and sexual abuse. In her 1988 book, Child Star, an autobiography, Temple described the Baby Burlesque series as a cynical exploitation of our childish innocence, explaining that if any of the preschool-age children misbehaved on set, they were locked in a windowless booth called the punishment box and forced to sit on a solid block of ice for extended periods of time. Temple was unfortunate enough to be sent to the punishment box several times, but claimed it did no lasting damage to her psyche. She described these production sets as having a very strong, present, time is money attitude, and that this led to her being forced to work while injured on multiple occasions, one time working a single day after a serious eardrum operation. It seems like Shirley wasn't the only one these Hollywood executives targeted, because she said on one interview that two men came onto both her and her mother. In 1940, at the age of 12, Shirley Temple had a meeting with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer producer Arthur Freed, where he exposed himself to her, and since she was just but a kid and didn't necessarily know much about seeing what she was seeing, she laughed. I would too. Why would a grown man want to show her their junk? Obviously embarrassed after seeing her nervously giggle, Freed threw Temple out of his office, where she met her mother, who had also been put through some situation like hers in another room. This deplorable man, who had done such a degrading thing to the young child, went on to produce wildly successful films such as Singin' in the Rain, The Wizard of Oz, An American in Paris, and Annie Get Your Gun. Being a known bold abuser did little to lessen reputation or professional success in early Hollywood. Years later, at the age of 17, Temple was made a victim again when producer David O. Selznick of Selznick International Pictures allegedly attempted to essay her. She was fortunately able to escape this ordeal unscathed, but this was not the last time she would have to deal with the pigs of Hollywood. Temple found herself being a victim to men's twisted fantasies in reviews for her movies as well, and there was a famous British novelist, Graham Greene, who ended up becoming the most infamous of these critics. Referring to her 1936 film, Captain January, Greene wrote, "Her neat and well-developed rump twisted in the tap dance." It's important to note that Temple was 8 years old at the time. Fortunately, Temple and 20th Century Fox were able to successfully sue Greene for libel. However, there is no telling the damage this must have done to that little girl's mind and self-image at the time. While she was being harassed on set, she was also being harassed by her viewers. Some spread rumors that she was in fact not a child, but a 30-year-old woman posing as a young girl. Her critics pointed out her stocky build and adult-like teeth that were actually due to a dental plate that she would wear on set to conceal her tooth gaps. This rumor became so prevalent that when Temple was 10 years old, the Vatican sent over Father Silvio Massante to investigate the claims of her being an adult. Imagine sending the church to check whether or not Shirley was a child. Others claimed that her famous trademark blonde curls was a wig, and she would often get her hair yanked and pulled on by strangers, trying to prove the rumor true. In reality, her ringlet curls were maintained by a torturous nightly process and a weekly vinegar soak that would burn and sting her eyes. And it was because of this that Temple found herself wishing she wore a wig. Shirley Temple officially retired from acting in 1950 at the age of 22, and during her acting career, she starred in 29 films from the ages of 3 to 10, but only ended up appearing in 10 from the ages of 14, 21. Later on in life, in 1967, Temple began her career as a politician and served as a public servant until 1992. She was able to serve as the United States ambassador to Ghana and Czechoslovakia, and she also served on the board of directors for major organizations like the United Nations Association, the National Wildlife Federation, Bank of America, and even the Walt Disney Company. In 1998, Temple was honored at the Kennedy Center for her contributions to early film and American culture, but no one ever apologized to what they did to her. Anyways, it's safe to say that the world grew much kinder to Temple in her later years, as opposed to her time as a child star. The legacy of Shirley Temple is important to the film world and still remains a staple of Hollywood culture, but it's important that we do not look back on these times with rose-colored glasses and see as clearly as it was presented. Hope she rests in peace and that through her story, no other child would have to go through what she went through. A fan on X said, "Yes, lots of young people have spoken about the abuse in Hollywood. Listening to Bella Thorne's story, it's just horrible what the kids go through and people turn a blind eye." Another said, "Shirley Temple describes a time when she was 12 and a Hollywood producer had her in his office and he got naked. Wild." So what do you think of Shirley's tragic story and what Hollywood did to her? Tell us in the comment section. Remember, this video is based on speculation and opinions, and if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more exciting updates. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.